あ、これ、For example, we have a vaccination. If we have a vaccine, like let's say influenza or measles or mumps or so, if we have a vaccine, we can cut this part. もしワクチンがあったらここら辺いくら暴露してもこっちの方に進むここら辺をカットできますよね。Yeah, we have a weapons called named vaccine. We can cut this part. And also prophylaxis. Prophylaxis, you have some idea about prophylaxis, right? Malaria or some other bacterial disease. 予防内服って日本語で言います。prophylaxis。マラリアの予防内服とか、あとジフテリアなんかの抗生剤の予防内服とか、インフルエンザのタミフルとか予防内服とか聞かれたことがあると思います。If we have a prophylaxis, this measure we can cut this part. And it's a clinical management field below here. We have a treatment and rehabilitations. We can put some control point here, management point, let's say management point. And here, isolation and treatment. When we would like to cut this cycle, maybe I'll come back with some examples. Maybe it makes you clear. このアイソレーションとかトリートメント、日本語で言うとですね、隔離とかそんなのを言うんですね。今隔離とかいう言葉あんまり使われませんよね。病院で働いていた人はどう言ってました？ So when you work in the hospitals and when you encounter some influenza outbreaks in your ward, let's say, どうしてました？ For example, you are working in the hospital as a doctor, right? どんなことしてました？インフルエンザが出た場合。隔離って言ってました？本当に。Now, 隔離 in Japanese, it's not a good word、とよく言われたんですよ。今、コホーティングとか言えませんか？
コホーティングっていう場合もありますけど、分かりにくい
ので。Okay, anyway, but isolation, so isolation treatment, but basically, in order to control communicable disease among human population, the basic point is, as I mentioned, isolation. Physically separate healthy person and unhealthy person. Or infected person. That is some sort of key component of control, communicable disease control and prevention among human population. ですね、いろいろちょっといい悪いはありますけれども、とにかく健康な人と非健康な人を分けるっていうのがある程度この危機管理の根本になってくると思います。Of course, we have to think about ethical issues or human rights or whatever, but basically, separate physically time and place. That's also important issues for public health risk management issues. And control, this control point is, for example, prevent a contact. コンタクトを避けるなら or vector, kill vectors, kill mosquito or whatever. Environment, provide safe water, clean waters. とにかくきれいな水をあげるとかそんな風な感じですよね。And prevent the exposure, prevent this, to cut this cycle, prevent the exposure is, let's say it's one of the example, repellent to prevent insect bite and bed net or and wearing a long sleeve or whatever. So this is just self-explanatory issues. ちょっとこれは簡単なことだと思うんですけれども、ちょっと例を挙げますね。Yeah, as I mentioned, so it's too easy and too textbook style. So maybe some of you or many of you have some idea, didn't realize it's important. But however, I'll give you some examples. But okay, from friends from Thailand. So let's say you are epidemiologists or public health professionals. Now we have encountered tuberculosis TB outbreaks or TB we have to working on the TB among human populations. So think about this cycle. TB is a bacterial disease. 細菌によるTB っていうのは結核なんですよね。結核は細菌による感染症。And how the bacteria transmit to the in terms of TB, transmit to others through cough or droplet, right? But TB is strictly speaking, it's an airborne disease. But this morning, I do not move on to the exact strict definition of airborne or touch or whatever. あまり詳しいことは言いませんね。あまり厳密なことは言いません。Let's say droplet. So the epidemiologist, the public health professional can draw this chart. そうするとですね、our epidemiologist とか public health professional はこれ頭の中でこの絵を描くんですよ。Yeah, so public health professional will draw this chart in my brain. How do you cut this cycle in order to control TB among human population? For example, using your knowledge about TB in the textbooks or
using masks.
you what?
Using masks.
Masks. Okay, prevent, for example, masks. Maybe this part. How about the vaccine? We have a vaccine, right? BCG. You have a BCG in your countries. But BCG, but North America or European countries, they do not have BCG. 日本は BCG ありますよね。In Japan, we have a BCG because BCG is not so effective for TB among adults or whatever. But this morning, we do not move into such discussion in detail. そうすると、then our public health professionals would like to put this control point, control start. With vaccination, BCG, we can cut this cycle of this point. Prophylaxis. Did you have experience about watching the TB outbreaks in the community? No? How about ありました? In Japan, we have a lot of episodes about TB outbreaks among communities, right? You're working in the public health office. How about others? Or others working in the hospital? 病院で働いてた人もなかったですか? Okay, so now you're working in the public health office. If you encounter the TB outbreaks, どうします? 予防内服大変ですよね。For example, okay, just explaining in Japanese. 日本でですね、このよく塾の先生が結核に感染しててっていうのはよくニュース、よくっていうかありますよね、よく。そうすると子どもたちに感染の可能性がある場合、よくそんなのどうします？予防内服させますよね。これが6ヶ月ぐらい飲まさなくちゃダメなんですよ。こういう事件が大なり小なりいまだに続いてますよね。So that's a prophylaxis. And if, for example, the teacher was infected in the TB, and how do you work on the student in the classroom? Maybe it's better to give them some prophylaxis, some anti-TB drugs to them. And the students have to take drugs for more than around 6 months. It's long. It's too much for them. And as you mentioned, masks, isolation, let's say, to prevent the spread of bacteria from diseased person to the healthy person. こういうふうにちょっと使うんですね。Diphtheria, okay. How about dengue? Dengue は知ってますかね。Dengue is a viral disease. And for example, デングはご存知ですか？デング。どういうふうに感染するかっていうのはよく新聞なんかで知ってる知識で十分なんです。Do you know? Yeah, dengue. そうです。Vector. Dengue is a viral disease and virus transmitted by way of モスキート、ベクターですよね。エリス・エジプタ熱帯島か。Right? In your country, you have a lot of problem about dengue, right? And also dengue disease, dengue infection. It's a wide spectrum disease, right? Many of the infected person by dengue virus is it's okay. It's a たくさん別に問題ない。No problem. However, some part, 10 or 20% have some symptoms of some common cold or, right? 普通のちょっと 10%、20%、ちょっとよく覚えてませんけれども、ちょっとした症状です。And very small part, the dengue hemorrhagic fever, dengue shock syndrome、かなりデング出血熱、デングショックシンドロームとか、そういったのに進む方もいらっしゃる。Then, okay, so you do not have a medical background, and I'm asking you, so how do you control dengue among human population? In other words, how to cut this cycle somewhere? Do you have several points to cut this cycle? というお話なんですけど。
一つは蚊の発生を防止す
る。ここですね。顔。他はまあそれですね。How about that? So as we see in the TB, do we have a vaccine? でも残念ながら unfortunately we do not have a vaccine, right? And do we have some good medicine, effective medicine for dengue? Maybe no. Dengue viral disease, we have very little weapons for tackling with the viral disease. ここら辺の薬もないんですよね、いい薬。So, as you mentioned, all we can do for dengue control among human population is this part, vector part, killing the mosquitoes or killing the babies of the mosquito. ミジンコじゃなくて何て言うんでしたっけ？そうそう、ボウフラを殺す。breeding side protection. And coming back to the dengue problem in Japan, have you ever heard a dengue problem in Japan 2 years ago? You're here in Tokyo? No, Japan? Really? Yeah, we have a dengue problem. But again, actually, dengue, 皆さんもまあちょっと今回ちょっと時間 Okay, so maybe we'll skip the dengue issues. Measles, we have another ちょっともう一つくらいしかない。Measles、はしかですよね。はしか、マシン。Measles is the viral disease, right? You know, Measles ははしかはどういうふうに感染していくか。Maybe you have some idea about how to transmit measles viruses. It's airborne diseases. So if I have a measles virus, if I had a measles here, maybe I'll infect all members in this classroom in very short period. ミーススバイラス、特に感染力強いもんですから、この部屋ぐらいだったらみんなに私が持ってたら感染させる。So it's a very strong infectivities. And how do you control 皆様はバックグラウンドがある人じゃない人はいましたっけ？まあその OK. So for example, measles はif we control measles among human population どこを切ります？ Where is the cut point of this circle in order to control measles among human populations? Yeah, we have a strong weapons about vaccine. We do not have effective drugs, right? Measles disease. So let's forget about this. And case management, we maybe forget about this part. Only vaccine is a strong weapon for us. はしかのワクチンっていうのはかなり有効なかなり強力な武器ですからね、私たちの持ってる。Cut this part. So as I mentioned, measles is airborne disease, so almost impossible to prevent or cut this part. はしかは空気感染なもんですから、ここの方をカットするっていうのはちょっと難しい。Something like that. So I'll show you how to use this chart, how to draw this chart in the brain in the public health professionals or epidemiologists how to use this chart to pick up some control point or cut point of this circle. These are some key of some way of thinking in terms of communicable disease control and prevention. Sorry about some in Japanese. 結局これがですね当たり前かと思うんですけども、このパブリック人の集団の中でこの、コミュニカ感染症をコントロールしようとするときにかなり簡単すぎますけども有効な話なんですよ。ただですね、さっき結核とか出しましたよね。あまり厳密に言いすぎると結核の専門家でこの話はしない方がいいです。言うとですね、ちょっとそこはあまり乱暴すぎるだろうとか厳密じゃないとかよく言われます。さっきのクイックアンドダーティーと同じですね。ただこれで十分なんですよね。パブリックヘルスの人の集団の中で危機管理を考える上では。Yeah, today I'll explaining some sort of how to grasp, how to obtain some general view of the infectious disease or prevention and control of communicable disease. I'll bring, so based on such ideas, next week I'll bring some ideas, a way of epidemiological way of thinking, how to investigate the outbreaks. そういったアウトブレイクのインベスティゲートっていうのは全部まとめたやつですね。そのどこが感染源で感染経路でリスクファクターがどこか。So investigated means for our epidemiologists identify sources, infectious sources and transmission route and risk factors of the infection or whatever. So that's all issues we call investigated outbreaks, outbreak investigation と言います。それは来週も。So I'll come back with such ideas or such lecture series next week. その来週ちょっとまた持ってきますね。今週はちょっとこの簡単な考え方だけを。